This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program News Analysis, now we bring you a discussion on landmark nuclear deal between Iran and 6 world powers. The participants are Commodore Uday Bhaskar, security analyst, and Partha Venkateshwar Rao Jr., journalist.
Agreement reached between Iran and 6 other world powers led by the United States, which would partially lift the sanctions against Iran in return for slowdown in the nuclear program and a greater monitoring of their nuclear facilities to assure the world that Iran is not on its way to weaponization of its nuclear program. This has been seen as radical breakthrough in the regional politics because Iran's nuclear program has been some sort of a nightmare, first for Israel and then for the Western world, especially the United States. There was a feeling that a weaponized Iran with nuclear weapons would pose a greater threat or would be a greater stumbling block for West Asia peace. Somehow or the other, it has to be contained. The advantage is that Iran has already been a signatory to NPT. So Iran on its part was arguing that it was within the parameters of the NPT agreement as to nuclear program and it has nothing to do with, it was short of weaponization. The talks went on, but it's a tough decision on both sides. The United States has reached out to talk to Iran and softened its stance. And Iran too went halfway through to make this happen. So how will this change regional balance is what is to be seen.
This particular accord, as they are calling it, I personally think it has the potential to be a very significant achievement. The way in which I see this particular agreement, accord as they are calling it, between Iran and the P5+1 led by the United States, I think the first response would be to say that this is a very significant breakthrough. Given the fact that Iran and the US have had very estranged relationship since 1979, which is the Iranian Revolution, and more recently, you could say that over the last decade, roughly from about 2003 onwards, the nuclear issue had become exceedingly complex and it had raised lots of concerns in many capitals of the world, including the United States, Western countries, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Gulf countries and so on. So there are two elements here as I see it. One is, as I said, it is potentially a very significant breakthrough. This is very early, meaning that the accord is barely 48 hours old and we have to see how both Iran and the United States are going to interpret this. And I think the last thing anybody wants is either side to claim a binary victory, meaning that it is only a US victory or a gain for the United States and the Western powers, or that Iran has got its way, which is what some critics have been arguing. I would prefer to characterize this as win-win situation, potentially, for the entire region, apart from the principal interlocutors, that is Iran and the United States, and that it also has the potential again for rearranging the regional geostrategic environment with implications for the global strategic order. The reason being that Iran is an issue that is engaging the attention of all the major powers, which is why the United Nations Security Council and the P5 have given it the kind of attention that it has received over the last 10 years. But there are hurdles, and I think we should not dilute that in any way. The first, of course, is the response from Israel and Saudi Arabia, who are aggrieved parties. You can see the responses that have come from these two countries, and I think we will have to see whether or not there would be any further developments coming from these two countries over the next few weeks. The other two areas where I foresee some problems are what I would call as the domestic response in the United States, because this accord has been arrived at by executive order. It has not gone through the US Congress. And we are aware that Israel has a fair amount of sympathy and a support base within the United States, in the media, in the Congress, and generally you might say within the equivalent of the right-wing constituency.
Yeah, there is both an Israeli lobby and a Jewish lobby.
So they would have a role to play. And finally, the fourth area where I expect some kind of a problem is domestic opinion within Iran. Because if the United States and the Western interpretation is that Iran has capitulated, I think it would cause problems for President Rouhani and for the what you might call as the moderate constituency within Iran, which wants this rapprochement. But just now I think we should cautiously welcome it and hope that all sides are able to stay the course and take this to its logical conclusion, which will be 6 months from now, because this is a very, very preliminary tentative accord which will lead to an agreement. So you might say that this has paved the way about talks that will lead to further talks.
This is some sort of an icebreaker at the beginning of the process of the negotiation, which will lead to an agreement.
Apart from icebreaker, one could talk about an iceberg to say that what we are seeing is only the tip and the beginning of a thaw. But there are very complex issues embedded in this, and some of them have implications for us, meaning South Asia and the entire Indian locus in relation to the Iranian issue, if you will.
It would be unfair to compare the North Korea with Iran because the political systems are different. Iran is much more democratic, much more sophisticated in its negotiating skills. But do you see that Iran might be forced to step back and reconsider if something goes wrong?
Well, Iran is trying to keep that space because I was noticing the way in which the Iranian foreign minister, for instance, was responding to the questions which were being asked immediately after the accord was arrived at. It's very interesting, by the way, that the accord was announced to the world at large through Twitter. And I thought that was an indication about the impact of social media. But I think the one refrain which caught my attention was that the Iranian foreign minister, Mr. Zarif, kept saying that Iran does not renounce the right as far as enrichment is concerned. Now, that immediately was, in a way, contradicted, or you had a completely different kind of response from the United States, saying that the US has not in any way diluted the pressure as far as enrichment is concerned. So I think this is a grey area, and both sides are trying to give it what you might call as the most positive interpretation from their respective positions. And here I think your reference to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and the fact that Iran has signed it as a non-nuclear weapon state comes into play, meaning that the NPT as a treaty allows signatories, even if they are non-nuclear weapon states, to have the right to enrichment, but for peaceful use of nuclear energy.
That's what Iran is claiming.
That's what Iran is claiming. But the only reason why there is some concern in the United States and other Western countries is that while the NPT does not specify a percentage, it does not say 5%. It says for peaceful civilian
generating electric power,
not for military purposes. The ceiling is perceived to be 5%. Now, if you increase it beyond 5%, it would have the equivalent of non-civilian application. For instance, you reach a higher level for submarine propulsion, where the reactor has a different requirement for fissile material. If you go further down that road of enrichment, you go towards weaponization. But the technical challenge is that the greatest effort, 90% of the enrichment effort, is in that 0 to 5%. Once you reach 5%, clocking up or going up to 20% or 90% is far more possible or far easier than the first attempt or the first effort to move from 0 to 5. Because of the Iranian concern, which is post-2003, the United States action in Iraq and various other developments, George Bush as president referred to them as axis of evil, and I think an Iranian anxiety that the United States was attempting a change of regime, which meant that it was hitting at the foundation of the current leadership in Iran, they had done or invested in a few areas which could be deemed as quote-unquote suspect. One is the enrichment, fact that it moved up to 20%. Second is the investment in a heavy water reactor, which could have given them the option of moving into the plutonium route. That Iran could have had two kinds of options for weaponization. One is the enriched uranium, which is one route through the centrifuge. The other is to go down the plutonium route, which is the heavy water reactor, and then you do the separation and various other technical processes. So I think the very fact that Iran had embarked on these programs caused this concern, and the fact that the IAEA was also not totally satisfied, meaning that there is a grey area.
Despite the inspection.
Absolutely. So I think the Western concerns and the Iranian position needed to be reconciled, and that is what this particular agreement or the preliminary accord is all about. That Iran now commits itself not to move beyond the 5% benchmark, and where it has enriched uranium up to 20%, it will dilute it and bring it down to a level which is not suitable for weaponization. So in that way, the central concern is dealt with, and this would be under the aegis of the IAEA. So these are the preliminary agreements, and in return, they are going to lift the sanctions up to a ceiling of $4 billion initially, which are frozen Iranian assets, and allow it to go up to $7 billion. So the pressure is not fully off. It's not as if Iran can freely now move into the oil market or the hydrocarbon or become the equivalent of a normal oil producer. The pressure is still there. But there is an indication that if Iran complies with all the technical parts of the nuclear industry that it has and allows the kind of quote-unquote intrusive inspections, which by the way is also going to be a very contentious area, then the US and the Western powers are willing to lift some more sanctions. And Russia and China also will have a role to play in terms of interpreting how exactly the compliance is to be inspected or ensured.
Would this also mean that the United States, which had been in some sort of a Cold War with the Ayatollah regime in Iran since 1979, now it's engaging with this present government? It has to recognize, or it has recognized, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that it legitimizes this particular regime?
Yeah, I think so, because the nuclear issue is the more visible. But I would say that there is also another track, which is the more significant part of the deal or the accord, is that the beginning of a rapprochement between the United States and Iran at a political level. Because I think here we must commend the leadership on both sides, both the United States and the P5+1, as also the Iranian leadership under Mr. Rouhani, that they have been able to stay the course as far as quiet diplomatic negotiations are concerned. And now we know that there have been secret negotiations that have gone on for more than a year. And Mr. Joe Biden, the US Vice President, was leading the United States, and he had a quiet meeting in Muscat along with the Iranian interlocutors. And I think more importantly, we should also commend President Obama, because in his second term, despite all the domestic opposition that he has had to deal with about being soft and not being able to take a hard stand, we had the example of Libya, etc. He, I think, was committed to finding the equivalent of a diplomatic solution. And in his second term, you'll remember, in his UN speech, he made the point that the United States is not seeking a regime change. And he put out what you might call as a certain feeler. And despite the fact that the initial Iranian response may not have been as empathetic as it ought to have been, I think we must recognize that President Obama has, in a way, run that extra mile or gone that extra step to ensure that there was space for diplomacy. And while this is not the end of the road, I think both Iran and the United States were committed to this political rapprochement, which, as I said, has very significant implications for reordering the regional strategic pattern. Meaning that if Iran is not seen as an adversary, it would have a bearing on the US in terms of its relationship from Saudi Arabia all the way to Iran, which means it plays into the equivalent of the political Islam that is at play. Saudi Arabia represents the Sunni leadership in political Islam, supported by the Gulf monarchies, and now Iraq, with its large Shia population, has its own space as far as the political Islam is concerned. So the moment you say that Iran is not an adversary, it would rearrange US-Saudi relations, US-GCC relations, and in a way bring more stability into the region, even if it's at the cost of a certain amount of dismay, which Saudi Arabia and Israel are differently expressing.
Would this also mean that India, which had to undergo a certain amount of discomfort and diplomatic tight-walking, it eases things for India because it was really caught in an uncomfortable situation between the US-Iran
Definitely. I think this is also going to give some space as far as India is concerned in terms of pursuing the bilateral with Iran, because this was the central fact, that the tension as it was increasing between the United States and Iran, it was having various regional repercussions. And the fact that the United States wanted to isolate or quarantine Iran had a significant negative impact on countries like India, for whom Iran is more than just an oil supplier. I mean, India recognizes Iran as a major power in the region, that it has a certain profile, it has a certain pedigree. I think that's very important to recognize about Iran. It is at one level a civilizational state. It is the inheritor of what you might call as the Persian pedigree. And over the years, India and Persia, as you know, in the old days, including the language, have had a great empathy to each other. It's a different matter that post-1979, the Iranian regime had adopted a certain posture. So for India, I think the improvement of the US-Iran will definitely reduce the tension, create more space. And immediately, I think there would be an impact on the hydrocarbon issue, not because Iran is going to be allowed to supply oil to India unconditionally, but this has an impact on the larger global oil market. And the fact that India has already reduced some of its imports from Iran will perhaps open space for other initiatives.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to a discussion on landmark nuclear deal between Iran and 6 world powers. The participants were Commodore Uday Bhaskar, security analyst, and Parsa Venkateshwar Rao Jr., journalist. It came to you in the program News Analysis, produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website, newsonair.nic.in. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.